Welcome to the Finance Story, and I'm your host, Vishal Krishna. Today we have with us Priya Agarwal, who is the finance manager at Meta. Meta, as we all know, is also Facebook. She has worked with KATERRA and Goldman Sachs in the past. She's a chartered accountant from the 2013 batch. She's a CFA from the 2017 batch. She has also been a class topper. She's been many things. We're going to talk about her inspiring journey in the world of finance. Hi, Priya. How are you?
Hey, Vishal, I'm good. Thanks. How are you?
I'm very good, and it's going to be great to talk about your life. I wanted to start with your early days, right? Who influenced you in finance? Was it your parents? Was it your friends? Do you have mentors? How did that interest in money begin, or interest in numbers begin? Let me put it that way. Let's start from your childhood.
Yeah, sure. So, just going back to the very early childhood, I've always been kind of what nowadays people call like a nerdy student, like, good in studies, good in everything. And my family also has been also very, very educated. My dad himself is a chartered accountant. So I always had that influence that, it's a very respectable field. It's really, interesting to know about finance. In terms of how I really got into it, I think in schools in Calcutta back then, you got to choose science and commerce at your 11th standard, and I absolutely didn't like science, and I loved commerce when I used to study commerce. So I think that's how I started thinking about, like, I have to take commerce. I really want to get into finance and strategy, and CA seemed like the right option forward for me.
Did you have mentors at the time? Did you have parents telling you that were parents business people? Did they influence you?
Yeah, so I think my parents were always very supportive on what I wanted to do. When I said that I wanted to do CA, like, as I said, my dad is a CA. We had other CAs in my family who kind of came across as mentors. One thing that at that time I did not really know what exactly CA is. I knew that there's something called as audit. I knew there's something called as tax, and I knew there's something called as costing, which was enough for me to, like, kind of get a very broad finance idea. And I never was like into business that much. I was more into, like, I've always been part of a service family, so I knew that one dream I always had was to be in corporate, like to wear, like, to be in those big buildings, sit in meetings, conference rooms. Like, that was like my passion at that time. I didn't know how to get there, so I thought CA probably will help me get a seat at the table.
Did you let's straight away go to your first job, right? I think it was at Goldman, oh, right? How
Goldman
did
Sachs.
that, and that too, it was in Bangalore. Was that very different from the world that you would imagine? And how were you prepared for
So I did articleship here in Calcutta first, in a very, very small firm. It was like literally the size of a room, small room. So it was a very small firm. It had some very decent clients. So going from there to like a corporate, like a MNC, which was like, 10 different buildings, a big campus, was like a dream come true for me. It was definitely like what I would see generally in movies, or like, in presentations, that you're like, holding a laptop, going from room to room. So it definitely felt like a dream come true, especially, and I felt really proud of like where I was, like in a very small firm, to where I was able to land at Goldman Sachs.
No, no, I mean, and did you apply for it? Did somebody come and pick you up at your articleship, wherever you are in that small firm? Did you apply? How did you plan your career? Did you apply by chance? Did somebody apply on your behalf? How did that?
Sure. Yeah. So I think the process really all started after my CA final results came out. As you can understand, like, there was campus interviews, and there were also like non-campus placements that come across. So my real strategy was, like, I wanted to do both. I wanted to do both campus interviews. I applied for Pune as a location, and then I started reaching out to a lot of different, like, recruiters at that time. Like, LinkedIn was very naive back then, but then I used to, like, find recruiters in Kolkata or recruiters in Bangalore. I was always open to the idea of going outside Kolkata, for that matter. And that's when Goldman Sachs popped up. I think they're pretty good at advertising that whenever results come out, they want to hire freshers. One thing that I was very clear in my head after doing CA and after doing 3 years of articleship was, I didn't want to do audit. Like, I didn't want to do audit. I didn't want to do tax. That's what I knew I didn't want to do. I was open to any other thing at that time. So I started when Goldman Sachs said that they're coming to Kolkata for doing on walk-in interviews. I was like, yeah, let's try it. I had no idea what Goldman Sachs is. It's just an investment bank. I read it. I read about it. I read a little bit of history, prepped myself, and I went for interviews. And I just felt like I'm just going. It's not going to happen. It's just an experience. I'll probably learn something. But I just told everybody at home, like, I'm going for an experience. I'm not going for an interview. But then, yeah, the interview just happened very naturally. I came back home knowing that, I will be selected, which was great. But I still didn't went to campus interview at Pune as well, just because I wanted to try that experience too. I interviewed with companies like Credit Suisse, Coca-Cola there, knowing that I might potentially already have an offer in hand. And then I went through Credit Suisse as well, and I asked the interviewer, what's the role? And they were like, yeah, don't worry about it. It's simple. And that just kind of like took a backseat for me. I was like, if the interviewer is saying the role is simple, I don't want to do it. Like, I don't know what that means. Like, that seems like maybe they're doing a lot of bunch hiring, like, like they're
Yeah,
just
I
like
got it.
hiring people.
I get the point. You didn't want to be in another audit type of feeling. You wanted something
Yeah,
more strategic, something more meaningful. Yeah.
right. So I think that's where I just took the decision of like, it was a better interview experience at Goldman Sachs than what I had at the campus. I felt I connected with the interviewers more. I got a little bit of better understanding of what I'm getting into. So I was like, all right, let's do it. Let's go to
Was it
Goldman
a
Sachs.
strategic role? Did you work with a lot of big clients while at Goldman, and later you moved on to KATERRA, of course? Was it
Sure.
strategic for you? Was it were you dealing with bond markets, financial strategy, forex
Sure.
hedging? Did
Yeah.
these kind of things, treasury management, did these kind of things fall into your lap at this point in time?
So Goldman Sachs, my role was financial reporting. It was not very much like front end investment banking or like, as you were saying, hedging kind of roles. It was more FP&A, what people know
Yeah.
today as financial reporting. I feel really good and lucky that I was exposed to the world of FP&A there, because FP&A is a role which kind of gives you like a 10,000 feet view of what a company is doing, how it's running, its finances, and most importantly for me, it's future strategy, future plans. As I said, I was never interested in the what happened already, like audit, tax. So that really like gave me the platform that I wanted. My role was to support the London team. So I was working with the EMEA financial reporting team. Then they had formed a newly team in Bangalore. So I got the opportunity to go to London as well for 3 months to meet my colleagues, to train with them. And I think the role came with a lot of exposure to senior directors, senior VPs, which for me, when I look back at this role today, I don't remember the work I did. I remember the soft skills I picked up. I remember like the kind of like stress management I picked up, like tight timelines. It's a company with like, very stringent processes. As you can imagine, it's a bank. So I really got to learn a lot of like, how do you work with cross-functional teams, like different geographies? How do you like present your work in front of senior directors? So I think that's like a really valuable thing that I got from Goldman Sachs.
Okay. You moved on to another corporate role, but you also managed to study in between. You finished your CFA, which is brilliant.
Yeah.
I want to ask you a question which all finance professionals want to know. You have family. You had to manage family. You have to manage your career. This is not specific to women, but can also mean to men on balancing things. How do you manage the anxiety? How do you manage the stress? Was there a mechanism that you coped with, or was it all experience that taught you and you became patient in the process? Or is it still work in progress? How did you manage all?
Yeah. So I would say, it's different for different stages. Like when I was at Goldman Sachs, I think my viewpoint at that time was very like myopic, day to day, right? Like I'm in a good job, like let's do the 9 to 5 job or whatever it is, right? Like come back home happy. But then I always wanted to do something more analytical. When I was studying CA, I felt like it was very much theoretical at that point of time. I clearly, honestly, don't know how the course has evolved recently, but it was very like theoretical. And I wanted to do something that like adds on to my CA knowledge and helps me like think more strategically. So that's where CFA came in. Um, and in terms of like managing like family and career, I think looking back, it seems like it's a lot that I got done. But my main, the way I generally cope is like thinking of one day at a time. Like, all right, if I've got exams, like if I've got my job as well as like my CFA exams for the next month, let me just focus on that. Like I've got by God's grace, I've got like a very supportive family who like always like is ready to hear me vent out, or like ready to like just hear my concerns, like be like fly to Bangalore when needed. So family support and friend support was really good. But other than that, like they've always coached me to think about like one thing at a time. Don't worry about like 1,000 things that are going with your current focus thing, right? Like if you're thinking about like marriage and then go to US, like again, focus on one thing at a time, get it done, move on to the next one. Multitasking doesn't work when it's like multiple different life-changing options that are going on.
You know, being a journalist for 20 years, I've noticed a lot of engineers reach, go for the skies, and they land up in the US, obviously, and they do very well. Very heartening to know a finance professional to end up in the US, and I'm really happy. How did you get this role with Meta? Did you apply again? Um, how was the move from Bangalore now to all the way to the US, right? And I've been to Menlo Park. It's beautiful. You can jog in the top floor, and it's got a lot
Yeah.
of restaurants and beautiful food,
Yeah.
and.
Yeah, sure. So it's a pretty long answer, and I'll just take you to the
Yeah,
journey. Let
please,
me know.
please.
So as I said, I moved to the US from Bangalore in 2017 as with my husband. So we
Okay,
got married.
got
My
it.
husband is a software engineer. He works at PayPal. He
Yeah.
got the opportunity to move. So as you said, like engineering, like it's a very
They're the
common
lucky
thing, right?
guys. They're lucky people. They
Yeah,
get
yeah.
they get picked. They're cherry picked by the American market. Yes.
Yes. So that the same thing happened with me. And I had a heads up in advance. It was not like I didn't know about it. I had time to plan for
Okay.
it. And my first reaction was like, should I just continue in GS, right?
Absolutely.
Like, should
Yeah.
I do that? But it had been 4 years working in GS, and I felt like I was ready for a change already. And I felt like this is a very natural course of change that is coming for me. So let me like take advantage of that, as opposed to just like, continuing the same thing. So I was like, it's good. I'll take a little bit of a break, and then I'll find a job. So when I came to the US, at that time I was still pending my CFA level 3 examinations, which was due June 2017, and I landed in US in March 2017. So what I decided, again, one thing at a time, keeping that mantra in mind, I was like, let me finish my exams first. I cannot handle like job hunting in a new country with like a very important exam, which will get me over the finish line for my CFA. It's okay if I'm out of job for some time. Again, my brother, who has been in the US, my husband, they've been like great mentors for me. They just told me one thing, like nobody's going to notice a small career break after 10 years of your career, right? Like it's okay. It's okay to take a pause. It's okay to focus on one thing. And I did that. So until June 2017, my focus was stay at home, study, get this exam done, clear it out, and then go to the job market, right? It also worked well in parallel because there is work permits, like some immigration stuff going in the background. So, it worked out well. So I gave my exams in June 2017. And the day I gave the exam, the next day was like, all right, let's start searching jobs, right? Like, I don't know what the results will be, but like, I have to get to the next thing now. In terms of the job searching, my approach had been three things. One was I took the job searching part as a job itself. I would literally sit down 9 to 5 in front of my computer thinking, all right, like, how do I tackle this thing? Like, there's some time which is for resume building, there's some time for like searching, so on and so forth. But I took it very seriously as a job. Like, it would be the time when my husband is at work, he's doing his job, I'm doing my job. So I kind of like took it very seriously, as opposed to being fretting about it 24 hours. I don't think that works well with me. And then I started like, again, thought about what I don't want to do. So I knew I didn't want to do audit, tax, anything in that dealt with the past. I also didn't want to do contract roles, which is something which is very easy to get into when you start in the US. Contract roles meaning like, it's a very short-term project, like a 3-month role, a 6-month role, very enticing for someone coming new into the country. Like, you get like hourly paid rates. It seems like you can get into the job like the next day when you want to get into the job. but it did seem like very short-term benefit to me. It didn't seem like something that I can feel settled in. So, and as you start applying to like sites like Indeed and Monster, like as soon as you start uploading your resumes, like you start getting calls, right? Like, because they're always in need of like employees. So I knew I didn't want to do. I would be like, that would be my last option. If I'm not employed for the next 6 months, like that's when I can think about it. But I just didn't want to do that. So having that clarity in mind of what I didn't want to do just like helped me focus on like the other open, like, area of opportunities.
And,
I
and when you
started
la-
applying.
and when you applied, right? Did you ever have this anxiety again that, hey, am I going to get a job at all?
Yes, I think that was, I didn't let the anxiety come in early. I think it was again like, I'm here to try and I'm here to like, again, apply wherever I can. And we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Like, again, one step at a time. Like, let's apply. If they don't reply back, it's fine. Like, I have 10 more other companies to apply, right? So I remember I applied to about 50 plus companies at that time, whether it was like, uploading on their sites. I used to like follow recruiters on LinkedIn. So if you like go search like recruiters in Bay Area, you see people coming up with their titles like recruiter at Lyft, at Square. I would just like follow them, like click the follow button, because people generally post like, oh, we have a rec coming up. We have like an opening coming up, and reach out to me. And that would like give me the new pathway to like connect to someone new. So I remember I applied to 50 plus companies and I got first line of response from 10 plus companies, which included both MNCs as well as companies name whom I had never heard of. So, it was a mix of companies whom I heard of. And then I started applying for those companies. I interviewed with like a couple of big MNC names, Visa, some medical companies. And I also interviewed at a startup where I finally ended up with KATERRA. So very similar to Goldman Sachs, I already had 2 offers in hand when I was interviewing KATERRA. I had, and which were both public companies. And when I was called for KATERRA, I was like, it's a startup, like, I don't know how it will be. Let me just give it a try. I mean, there's nothing to lose in an interview. That is something I always try to tell everybody. It's always a learning experience. You meet good professionals, you learn something, you make mistakes, like, what went well, what didn't go well. So I generally don't say no to any interview. And I went to KATERRA and it was really like something refreshing for me. It was a startup. It was something that I didn't know what, I knew it will be totally different to my job at Goldman Sachs. The pay was good. There was free food. So, and again, like there was a very particular incident when I was interviewing at another, as I said, an MNC. And I asked them how the role.
Wasn't it a construction company, KATERRA, if I remember,
It was
at Menlo Park itself, correct?
It was a construction company, so a very different industry. But at the same time, FP&A is something that I believe has very transferable skills. Like it's business understanding, it's reporting, it's like dealing with business partners, right? It's like variance analysis, trends, understanding the business, understanding the cost, which is something that's the bread and butter of a CA, right? Like that's something that I had done it in a banking environment, and now I was getting an opportunity to do it in a very different environment. So I kept telling myself that I have the transferable skills. I can go to any industry. It's a matter of just finding the right place where I feel good entering the company. I don't know how it will be at the end of the day, but I should feel good going into the company. I should feel good about the team I'm going to work with. I should feel good about like the role of the company. So when I compared 2 offers in hand, one was like Visa, very similar to Goldman Sachs, very matured company. And they were giving me exposure to just expenses in the P&L. Versus KATERRA, which was like a startup, like a very hyper growth company. I was going to get a role which included corporate finance, like fundraising, diligence, also like financial reporting, FP&A, like P&L reporting analysis, like a mixed bag of things, and an entire P&L experience. So I felt like the Visa role was again very straightforward, like just expenses versus like a full P&L exposure at KATERRA in a different industry. And I remember again, like I keep saying, like, my brother and my husband, who's been like two big rocks for me, saying like, you're too early in your career to like not take risks. Like you already have been associated with Goldman Sachs. This is Silicon Valley. You should give things a chance. Like, do not be afraid of like just going in the same, like, I worked at Goldman, now let me just go at Visa. Like, be very like a very comfortable change, right? Just try it out. Like, if it doesn't work, it's fine. Like, you can always find something new. And I think that like really helped me make the final call. Like, all right, let's try it out. Like, let's see what it is. And I think it was really good. I spent 2.5 years at KATERRA, and I think it was the best time when the company was flourishing, and I got to learn a lot from there.
Yeah, I remember they were also big in India for a while, and
Yeah.
and there's another side of the story. We won't get into that, but the main part is now you're more to Facebook, which is now
Yeah.
Meta. Now that must have been exciting for finance professionals who want to get into these big companies, right? Who are looking at India, Middle East, Southeast
Yeah.
Asia. They can also make it in the US. And how did that happen? You're a finance manager there. Pretty excited
Yeah.
to know what you do there and how's the role like. I know you can't give in much because you work there,
Yeah.
but you just
Yeah.
some information on how your role sounds like and how exciting it is, so that people can also apply in places like.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. So I'll start on how I got into Meta. So after spending a good amount of time at KATERRA, where like I learned a lot, I was kind of getting at a saturating point with the construction industry, because it's relatively slow moving versus other things in Silicon Valley, which I was now like better aware of after spending 2 years, was more into consumer electronics. So I knew I wanted a change, and I knew I wanted a change in hardware, not in software. Again, Silicon Valley is full of companies like Twitter and like, you name it, right? Like Apple, like so many different companies. To me, it seemed like, again, a software company financials seems to be like relatively straightforward than hardware. Hardware is like, in very simple terms thinking, software, like, again, not to discredit software companies, but like it's subscription based. It's like you have revenue, like you create new users, you have like expenses. But if you compare with hardware, like they have a factory, they're running operations, they're building a product, they're taking it to the market, they're selling it, which seems like more complicated and more like, diverse. So I knew I wanted to get into something hardware. So I started applying to different companies, and I think it again took some time, but I got lucky where I saw, again, on LinkedIn, through LinkedIn, I saw like some of the recruiters or some of the people resharing posts of opening at Meta. And I reached out to, and when you see like Meta, you see like, again, you have some alumni, you have some people who have worked in Goldman Sachs, maybe in different countries, you don't even know them. I just used that connection and I said, hey, I worked at Goldman in the past. I saw your team has some open roles. Can I apply? Do you think I'm a good fit? And it worked out. They were happy to take my application forward. So I am not, and after a long interview process and everything, I landed at Meta. So what I really do at Meta is I'm part of Reality Labs division, which is a new evolving division at Meta from the last 6 or 7 years. It's the hardware business of Facebook/Meta. So it's different from Instagram, WhatsApp, Facebook. I don't work in that section at all because that's software related. That was not where I was initially interested in. So this is the hardware business. We make virtual reality devices like Quest 2. We also make other hardwares like portals, which is like smart home calling devices. So it's an R&D segment. It recently got, Meta has started recently reporting separately for RL. And it's a very, again, hyper growth area where Meta is making a lot of investments. So I look at specifically finance for, the cost side for these products. Like, what is the total cost at which we're making these products? Helping set targets. Are we, trying to like, are we making these products like at target or not? Trying to understand the P&L profitability, and also trying to look at the accessories business for this. So if you think about it, it's again very much like, from a CA perspective, it's about costing, analysis, and FP&A kind of role. So again, to the community who's hearing this, it's nothing, it's not something that you cannot do. It's it's about understanding the industry, the business, the terminology. But then I think the CA course gives you a good understanding of operations, right? Like, I think cost is something that we always keep in mind, and this role is just embedded in cost analysis.
What is some of the advice that you'd give to youngsters from a financial point of view, from a learning point of view, and also for women who are moving away from their home country and coming to the US or countries like that? And how should they make sure that they focus on the finance role in a very different way and not to have anxiety? I know it's a long
Sure.
question, but I'd love you to take
Yeah,
it.
so I'll answer in parts. I think for people coming new to the country, I would say I would have like two main advices. One is be ready to unlearn and relearn things. It's you have to come up with a mindset that what I know is good, but that might not be the way here, right? Be humble to that approach. Um, it's not like what you know is not valuable, but it's okay to understand what is different here and molding yourself to it, right? And that will go a long way. Like that also applies when you change just one company to the other, right? You always think about like, oh, that's how it happened in another company, and that's fine. Like you might find out a way to do in this company as well, but be open to like learning new ways of doing things. Be open to like changing your thought process and not sticking to like, this is how it was always done, it should be this way going forward as well, right? So and then the other thing I would say is, um, for me personally, it was be clear on what you don't want to do, which I think I kind of touched upon a couple of times. I think it just helps you make the right decision for your long-term career when you are in a very stressed scenario, right? Like if it's like you're trying for a job for 2 months and you're not getting it, and you get a call for a contract role that day, like everybody faces that dilemma. Like, should I just do it? Like, I'm tired of searching a job, right? You might, but at the same time, like, was it something that you always wanted to not do and now you're like just doing it out of stress, right? So that has helped me a lot, knowing what I don't want to do, which is like 2 to 3 things, not a lot, but that helps me focus on everything else that I could do, right? I don't have to like fall back on the things I don't want to do. In terms of managing, like in terms of like your question about advice to the young professionals who are looking to like enter big companies, I would say like, if you're students, if you're someone who's still in the CA course, just focus on your studies and like get it done. Don't worry about jobs or these things right now. Like once you're done with your exams, that's all your life is about, like searching jobs and like changing jobs. So, but you cannot come to it, you cannot reach to it unless you have the degree in your hand, right? So focus on the degree first. Like again, one thing at a time, just focus on that. Once we are done with your job, you know, LinkedIn is a powerful tool. Like LinkedIn is something I wish I knew more about it when I started my job hunting process. Like networking is so important. Soft skills is so important. Like I think in your first job, I think you're hired mainly for your technical skills because employers know that you're a fresher. As you progress in your job, and especially if you become managers, if you go in the management line, soft skills are super important. In some places, like I am now an interviewer, I hire people at Meta as well. Uh, we over-index on soft skills sometimes. We feel like we can teach people like some formulas or like some systems, but we want folks who are collaborative. We want folks who are who can manage, you know, manage the room, like manage business partner relationships, right? Get the work done at the same time, make sure like, you know, they are making, like they're doing it with everyone's interest in mind, right? So I would say focus on soft skills, which again comes with time, comes with experience. And there are a lot of like courses or like, the way I generally cope with some of this is I read some books, I do follow some like good motivational speakers, influencers. Like I think you said at one point that I didn't let anything break me down. I don't think that's fully correct. I think, you know, things do hit you at some points, but then I talk to people who inspire me. I talk to like, I listen to TED Talks. I listen to like people who have done it all and like feel like, all right, if they can do it, I think I have a chance, right? So form your form your own ways that can inspire you, whether it's like podcasts. Again, there's so much on the internet today, right? Like there's podcasts, there's books, there's LinkedIn influencers, and that's your fallback option. Anytime you feel like you're at a loss, like, all right, I need something to motivate me back, right? I need something to bring me back to where I was. But I would just add one thing, that one of the questions that I really get a lot from people on LinkedIn is, I'm in India, can I apply to like a US company, right? And I always answer that with a heavy heart, because I know how tough immigration rules are in the North America, which is what, like, you cannot apply for a company in the US or North America if you do not have a work permit in hand. So that is something that I always reply with a heavy heart, because I know people are so eager to work in these companies, but immigration rules are, it is what it is. It's not something that I can manage or they can manage themselves. But I would still say, like, that shouldn't stop them from thinking big. Or there are like a lot of different countries now opening up with more relaxed immigration rules, and like there's never a dearth of good startups in India, especially Bangalore. So don't feel bad about that, but just focus where you can go to. Don't regret over where you cannot.
One step at a time, like you said.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's Priya Agarwal, obviously from Meta. She's a finance manager there. You can write to us to connect with her, or you can connect with her on LinkedIn. Priya, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Vishal. It's been a pleasure.